Well, good evening, everybody. Let's call the meeting to, no, that's a different thing. This is a different conversation. We're not voting on anything tonight, I believe. I'm gonna vamp for a little bit as people continue to move into the space, hearing my voice. I wanna welcome everybody to this, my name is Brian Lewis. Let's go there first. My name is Brian Lewis. I'm the Associate Dean here in the College of Natural and Health Sciences. I'm a faculty member in the biology department here and Director of Pre-Health Programs. There's about 3 other titles. I'm just not gonna go through them right now. The bottom line is for tonight, I am your MC, or your Master of Ceremonies, or MC depending on how you wanted to spell it, and I'm not sure what it means if you go that way. My job tonight is to shepherd people through this program. So I'm thrilled, absolutely thrilled to see so many people here for our 8th annual Advisory Board Alumni event within the College of Natural and Health Sciences. So thank you all for coming on this lovely fall evening here in the state of Wisconsin. We're gonna have a lot of fun tonight. There's a lot of fun stuff that we're gonna be doing. A couple things I want to just get out of the way logistically before we actually begin with the program. I'm sure you can smell the food. We're gonna have a buffet style dinner tonight. So we're gonna do that kind of as the event goes on. We have a number of fantastic guest speakers we're gonna have tonight. I'm also going to encourage everybody to bid on items for the silent auction. We have those set up lovely at tables in the back, so please feel free to do that. I will give you a fair warning on this. We are going to call a final call for the silent auction beginning at 7:45. The silent auction will close at 7:50. So if you're going to make some bids on those things, please feel free to do so. There's tremendous things back there, handmade jewelry from one of our staff faculty members within the math department. There's some really interesting stuff for the theater department. I will continue to highlight some of these things as we go on, but please feel free to bid early and often on the silent auction. Also remember that everything that you bid on these silent auctions, the proceeds of this go to scholarships, to fund scholarships within the College of Natural and Health Sciences. So again, please bid frequently and generously if you would choose to do so. All right, so it is my great pleasure right now to introduce, to come to the stage for a few remarks, our current president of the for the College of Natural and Health Sciences Advisory Board, Jim Stevens.
Thank you very much, Brian. Greetings. This is our 8th annual alumni and community event. Once again, with considerable pride, we can get together at this year's event to share our many accomplishments of our university. With about 60 majors, minors, concentrations, and certificates, the College of Natural and Health Sciences provides our students a strong academic foundation for meeting the highest scientific and technological challenges. All of Parkside's stakeholders benefit from the school's emphasis on experiential learning in many programs. Our stakeholders include students, alumni, faculty, staff, and the business community here in Southeast Wisconsin. We have a full agenda today. Please take advantage of all aspects of today's schedule of events. We will participate in today's meeting through hybrid participation. Namely, we are meeting both in person and virtually. We all intend to enjoy today's social and networking opportunities with fellow students, alumni, faculty, staff, and with friends of the university. Please join us for our fascinating and timely presentations from our speakers. Dr. Gallipo is a leader in the healthcare industry and in the immunology field, and Dr. Moazabi is a tenured professor of mathematics and physics here at UW-Parkside. Dr. Moazabi just published his 100th paper. Also during our event, we plan to recognize some of our exceptional students with scholarship awards. These scholarship awards are available thanks to donations primarily from our alumni. The need for financial support through our scholarship funds has never been greater. Please consider a gift to our scholarship fund so that our students can continue to pursue their career ambitions through a degree at the University of Wisconsin-Parkside. Despite the challenges of the pandemic, UW-Parkside and our students have accomplished a great deal. Our university graduated the largest class of students in our past academic year. Most notably, over 1/4 of UW-Parkside's year 2021 through 2022 graduating class earned degrees through this College of Natural and Health Sciences. We also can proudly announce that we have 2 academic programs in our college. This includes our new Master of Science Physician Assistance degree, which is proposed to start in May of 2025. We also have the new Radiologic Science concentration within our Applied Health and Sciences program. We should be immensely proud of our accomplishments here at the University of Wisconsin-Parkside. Let us all enjoy a wonderful day together. Thank you very much. Is that Brian?
Thank you very much, Jim. I'm also in the dangerous position of standing between you and dinner. So at this time, we will have people go back to the buffet and start working on their dinner plans. We're going to come back together again as a group at about 6:45, where we're going to have our esteemed colleague do his presentation for the night. But until then, please feel free to grab some food in the back and, peruse the silent auction items. We're releasing the tables by hand, so I've been told by Anthony, so we'll wait for that direction and then we'll go that way. So please don't all run at once. There's plenty of food for everybody. Thank you all. Well, I certainly don't mean to interrupt the fantastic conversation that's happening tonight, and I'm going to encourage you to continue this conversation as the evening goes on. How about a big hand for our Aladdin catering service tonight and the great food, the great meal that we're having here tonight. Thank you, guys. Thanks for all the help. Thanks for handling me as I tried to dismiss tables that I shouldn't be doing. Very appreciated with that, so thank you. That's very nice. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start with kind of the formal part of the evening tonight. We have a couple of guest speakers that we're going to have come up. We're going to have some student scholarship award winners that we're going to do at the end of the night. I also want you to continue to consider bidding on your silent auction options that are in the back there, so please feel free to continue bidding as you go through the evening here. The food will also be out for a little while, so again, please feel free to do that as well. Another big thing, we are officially live streaming at this moment, so for the people who are at home, hi. Thanks for showing up tonight. Appreciate it. The dinner was good. Hope you had a good dinner too. Ours was good. Did I say it was good? It was pretty good. So what we're going to do now, it's actually a great pleasure of mine. I see on my sheet here, I actually get to do this, to at least very briefly introduce my friend and colleague, Dr. Paul Mohosby, who's going to come up and give a presentation a bit on his career and whatever else he wants to talk about. He's got the podium for half an hour, it's his. So, but he's a good friend. He's been a good colleague for the entire time that he's here. He's not going anywhere, neither am I. And I will also say, just one of the coolest guys to do science nights with, man. So we have so much fun making stuff up and talking about physics and the human body and how it functions. We'll do it at least one more time, I believe, before we wrap things up. But it's my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Paul Mohosby. Please come to the stage.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for all coming. My name is Paul Mohosby, and I've been here at Parkside for almost 37 years, and I've been teaching a total of almost half a century. Well, anyway, thank you. Thank you. A couple of months ago, Dean Otu asked me to be a speaker and talk about something. I don't know why he asked me to do that, but I think the reason was that he knows that I'm very old. And when you're old, you have a lot of stories to tell. So I think that's why he asked me to give something, talk about something. Well, anyway. The title of my presentation has 3 words in it. One is dream and one is science. and one is career. So somehow I thought I have to figure out something or talk about something that has those three words in it. So this is what I'm going to tell you about the story of how I got into science and how I got here. Excuse me. It all started when I was 9 years old. And I had a dream. And in my dream, a star fell in my backyard. So I went and I picked it up, held it in my hand, and it was so beautiful. It was emitting light, it was emitting green light, and it was just glowing. It was so beautiful. And in my dream, I went to my father and I asked him, why is this star so beautiful and glowing? And he said, because it's made of phosphorus. Now, how this word phosphorus was in mind, that I had a dream, and the word came to my mind in my dream, I have no idea. And even as of today, I don't know how that word had come to my mind. And in fact, the thing is that there are three forms of phosphorus. They call it allotropes in chemistry. One is called white or yellow phosphorus that does in fact emit green light. The other two, one of them is red phosphorus that is used in making matches together with potassium chlorate. And the third one is black phosphorus, which has the structure of graphite, doesn't really have much industrial application. But anyway, so then when I woke up in the morning, I went to my dad and I said, Dad, how can I get some phosphorus? And he looked at me and said, phosphorus? What do you want phosphorus for? I said, well, I want to make a star from it. He said, a star? Are you crazy? Who told you that you can make a star out of phosphorus? I said, you did. He said, no, I didn't. I said, yes, you did. No, I didn't. I was so confused. I couldn't tell what was dream and what was reality. So he just said, I didn't say anything like that. Okay. So now I have to somehow get my hand on phosphorus. Now, I'm 9 years old. How can I get phosphorus? So then I had a brother who was 4 years older than me, and he was in middle school. I talked to him, and he said, yeah, but first you have to learn chemistry if you want to make phosphorus. Chemistry, so how do I learn chemistry? So he gave me some of his books, and I started reading and reading and reading, and then I had to get other books and so on. Anyway, long story short, I found out that phosphorus is in animal bones. In fact, 80 to 85%. In fact, phosphorus is the next element to calcium in terms of abundance in human body. And 80 to 85% of that is in the bones and teeth. So I learned that it's in the bones. So how do I extract it from bones? Well, I learned that I had to get some hydrochloric acid so that I would soak the bones in hydrochloric acid. Well, there was a shop not too far from our house that they were rebuilding car batteries, and although they used sulfuric acid, that shop happened to also have hydrochloric acid, so I managed to get some from them, and some bones, and soaked bones in there for a few days. And then in bones there is calcium phosphate, and that hydrochloric acid brings that into liquid, into solution in the form of phosphoric acid. So I did that. And the bone that was flexible then, which was just oocyte, that was left, over, that I threw away. So then, excuse me. I don't want to bore you with this, but it took me about 1.5 years to eventually, through a series of chemical reactions, and I had to learn chemistry and some algebra and this and that, longer story. So eventually I reduced it to a form that was called metaphosphoric acid that was ready to be reduced to phosphorus. But now I need an electric furnace. How do I get an electric furnace? My brother said, now you have to learn physics. Physics. I already spent 1.5 years learning chemistry. No, well, you have to learn physics. Okay, so I started learning physics. And then I found out that I can make it as long as I have these filaments that they can become incandescent and eventually, give it temperature that I need. I need about 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit temperature. So after reading a lot of physics, I figured out that I need these filaments, something that would tolerate that temperature. And I found out that those are the filaments that are in incandescent light bulbs that are tungsten. So I broke a whole bunch of incandescent light bulbs, everything that we had around the house, I broke them, and I got the filaments, and by then I knew how to connect them in series and parallel to get the right resistance for getting the temperature. So anyway, so I got some construction bricks to set up the furnace and connected the filaments the way I had to connect them, and then I hooked it up. I was hoping to get my metaphosphoric calcium or calcium metaphosphate to, reduce to phosphorus. Well, as soon as I plugged it in, everything burned out. Didn't work. Why? Didn't know at the time. But then I figured out that it's the oxygen in air that is oxidizing tungsten. Although tungsten has a very high melting point, over 3,400 degrees Celsius. So then I found out that I need argon. But how do I get argon? Nobody is going to give me argon. So then I thought somehow I have to keep oxygen away from my furnace. Well, my father had these small carbon dioxide capsules that he was using to make carbonated water, to make drinks with them. So I took those and punctured them, and it started generating carbon dioxide atmosphere to keep oxygen away. Well, I tried a few times, it didn't work, but eventually it worked. And one night, after the reaction was completed and the carbon dioxide was eliminated and oxygen showed up, I suddenly saw that inside my electric furnace is glowing green in the middle of the night. Woo-hoo! I was jumping for joy. That was the happiest moment of my life. And I cannot tell you how happy I was. I mean, this was just, I just cannot describe it, the way I felt. And I could not sleep that night. Next morning, I told my brother and showed him. And by the way, as I was jumping for joy and so on, suddenly the inside of the furnace caught on fire, because that thing, it oxidizes with, and becomes, phosphorus pentoxide. Anyway, it caught fire. But fortunately, because the amount of phosphorus was very small, the fire, went out, fairly quickly. So then the next morning, I told my brother about it, and he told his chemistry teacher in middle school. Well, his teacher was interested in talking to me because apparently this was something that they didn't know, that they could extract phosphorus by this method. I'm sure there were other methods, but not this method. So he wanted to talk to me. So then he and one of his friends, two chemistry teachers, came to our house, and I remember my mom made them tea and so on. So then here I'm sitting there. By then I was 12 years old. So I'm sitting there, a 12-year-old kid, explaining chemistry to two middle-aged, middle school or high school chemistry teachers. So then that was a turning moment in my life, because I knew that I wanted to be a teacher, because I really enjoyed explaining this thing. So I decided to continue with chemistry and eventually become a teacher. I remember that when I was 12 years old, then I was tutoring high school students who were taking chemistry, and they needed tutoring, so I was tutoring them. And then eventually I went to college, and when I was in college, I realized that my passion was for physical chemistry, more physical aspects of it. But when I went to college, you could not switch your major. If you wanted to switch, you had to start from the beginning again and take the entrance exam and do it again. So I continued chemistry until I graduated, and then I got a scholarship to go to England Imperial College to do physical chemistry. Well, I went there, but the weather got to me, and I was getting very depressed. And then the professor that I was working with, he suggested that I go to Berkeley, because he said Berkeley is a good school and the weather is beautiful. So excuse me, I went to Berkeley, and I was still in chemistry. And then after about 3 months, I met someone there, excuse me, who was an Italian faculty who was there spending his sabbatical there, and he was in material science and engineering. So he suggested that since I'm more interested in the physical aspect of it, I should switch my major to material science, and especially because material science was red hot at that time. There was so much money available. And he said, if you go to material science, your tuition will be paid, and you have some salary and so on. So then I did, and I switched my major, and then I went to material science, and that was 1971. And then in 74, in 3 years and 3 months, I got my PhD. And that was also interesting because when I got my PhD, one day my advisor came in and he said, "You're done, you're finished." I said, "What? What do you mean I'm finished?" He said, "You're done, you've completed everything." And so anyway, then he wanted me to stay there and work for him as a postdoc, but I didn't want to stay. I wanted to go back to my home country, which is, by the way, which is Iran. Thank you. Thank you. Not a great country to be from these days. So anyway, so I went back, and I was there until revolution took place, 1979, and then I came back to United States. I had to come back, and I spent the first 5 years in Alabama, and I taught there, and then I came here to Wisconsin, and here I am today. Now, when I was in my last year of graduate school, companies would come to Berkeley, and they would interview students, and they would hire them even before they graduated. And me and one of my friends who was from India, we interviewed with Boeing company, and we both got job offer from Boeing. And at that time, the offer was about I think it was either $26,000 or $27,000 a year, which was a pretty good, offer at the time. So I left the country, but he stayed, and he went to Boeing. Well, after about 45 years or so, he found me on the internet about a few months ago, and we started communicating, and we talked on the phone. And he told me that he, after changing jobs 3 times, and at the end, I think he was working for Northrop Grumman company, which is a defense industry. And he retired in 2008, and he retired with a salary of about $583,000 or so a year. So then he asked me if I regret that I did not follow that path. And I told him, absolutely not. If I had to do it again, I would have done exactly the same thing. I love teaching, I love doing research, I love my students, and I would not exchange it for anything in my life. I'm very happy what I have done, and I'm happy to be here. I have enjoyed every minute of my life. And more importantly, when I left the country and went back to Iran, I met the love of my life, my wife, and we married, and we've been married for 42 years. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here tonight. She was not feeling well. But so, long story short, I never regretted anything that I did in my life. Thank you. Now, thank you. So, I'm 76 years old now, and but when people ask me how old I am, I don't tell them I'm 76. I say I'm 26 years old plus 50 years of experience. So, but anyway, the thing is that like I said, I mean, I enjoy doing research. I enjoy teaching. Teaching for me is not a job. It's my hobby. And when I go to the classroom, I don't even pay attention to how time passes. I just love doing that. And also, I look at my students as my family. I don't look at them as someone, outside my family. In fact, I don't have any biological children, but sometimes people ask me, and in fact, some time ago, somebody asked me if I had any children. If I had any kids, I said yes. He said, how many? I said about 2,000. So, anyway, that's the story of my life, and here I am. And one of these days, probably the chancellor is going to call me and say, Paul, you're too old, go home. And that would be. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you.
About 2,000 children, indeed. I can't even imagine what this university would be like without Dr. Mahasby. He's so kind and generous with his time, more so than I think any other instructor I've known. One of the highest compliments I think I could pay him, besides being a very good friend of mine, is people will ask me, who should I be taking for classes? And I will tell them, Dr. Mahasby is the best professor and teacher I have known, period. Any subject, any discipline, he's the best. So, thanks for being here, Paul. You're one of the reasons I'm here too, by the way. All right, well, it's now my pleasure to move on to the next speaker, and I'm not going to introduce that speaker, but I will introduce the person who's going to introduce that speaker. I'm privileged to also call a friend of mine, Dr. Jeffrey Medine, to the stage, who's going to introduce our second speaker for the day. Jeff, come on up here. Also remember, there's still silent auction going on. Please bid.
Thanks, Brian, for that long and detailed introduction. It's my real pleasure to introduce Dr. Jacques Galipeau tonight. We were talking about who to have for this event, and Jacques immediately came to mind. He has had a long and illustrious career. We've known each other for a while. And you can see his position in the booklet that you have, so I won't go through all of that. But an important piece is that he is the sitting president of the International Society for Cell and Gene Therapy. So if you want to talk about cell and gene therapy, he's the right person to have come speak at this event. He's up at Madison. You see that. A little bit more, some statistics about Dr. Galipeau. He has 7 issued patents. He's given 183 invited talks. He has more than 200 peer-reviewed publications. He's sponsored 8 INDs with the FDA, which I'm on my second one here, and it's as painful as it sounds, as you would think it would be. But what I really love about Jacques, and what really set it in my mind that he would be perfect for this event, is that whatever Jacques does, he does with both feet. He jumps in. He's a polymath. If you want, he could give this lecture about now Italian wines, usually French wines, but now he's become expert on Italian wines. He could give this talk about cooking. He won't even let me in the kitchen, and I like to cook. And he has a real bent for history, and he works all of these things into his talk, a great presentation. And one little small anecdote, and he's going to hate this because I always bring up this story, about how he jumps in with both feet into everything that he does. We were at a meeting in Miami Beach, and we're sitting on the boardwalk watching all the beautiful people go by, and we look like scientists, of course. So nobody's paying any attention to us. And he goes, Jeff, I gotta change this. So he's gone for a while, and the rest of the people at the table were looking around. Well, comes walking down the boardwalk in a white linen suit and a big Panama hat about this big. So he fit in perfectly on Miami Beach. Looked like a Panamanian drug dealer. So this is Jacques in a nutshell. He's a bon vivant, he's a wonderful colleague, and he's a very good speaker. I taught a class at the University of Toronto for a number of years on how to give talks. And Jacques was one of my examples about being able to carry an audience for an hour with only 5 slides. So I think he's got more than 5 slides here. He's a bit of a historian as well, so I'm sure he's going to tell you a little bit about medicine in Wisconsin. But Jacques, thanks for taking and coming here to visit Parkside.
So, Jeff, thank you for the kind introduction as my first slide comes up, and I'd like to thank Dean O2 and the organizers for inviting me to come to your campus, your beautiful campus. Although I was asked, you walk around, I thought, gee, my first time here, so I just went parking lot there, but anyway. So that being said, yeah, Jeff is right. I'm going to give you a little bit of a historic context. I'm going to talk about living therapeutics. You're going to ask me, what's living therapeutics? But I'm going to talk about living therapeutics in the context of cancer, but we need to put that in perspective historically. So let's see. There we go. Cancer therapy really started in 1846. So 1846 was when anesthesia was first developed. So surgical oncology started then because the very first patient that underwent surgery under anesthesia was a young man who had a neck tumor resected. And that was in 1846, and you know the resection was successful because the young man died in 1855, so we know he survived the procedure. But this was the Mass General Hospital in Boston. So surgical oncology, first patient under anesthesia, 1846. Radiation therapy, 1957. Actually, this is a picture of the first subject treated, a young boy that had an unfortunate disease, retinoblastoma, which is a tumor of the retina. And he had to have one of his eyes removed surgically, and he had a tumor in the other eye. And this physician, Henry Kaplan, basically developed modern beam radiation therapy and radiated the other eye. So radiation therapy, 1957. Chemo, methotrexate, 1951. So methotrexate was the first chemo agent out there. And it was first found to have some effect in the setting of breast cancer. There are certain cancers that even today we treat with methotrexate. We still use it, that lead to complete remission. So as you figured out, I'm a hematologist and oncologist, so surgery, radiation, and chemo is what you always hear about when somebody is afflicted by cancer. But Wisconsin was actually the seat of an innovation that also moved this whole space, which was bone marrow transplant. So Fritz Bach was a 33-year-old faculty member at the UW-Madison. And in 1966, he published in Science a method that allowed to identify siblings that were a genetic match for a bone marrow transplant. Because prior to that, we knew about blood groups, ABO, but HLA typing, we didn't know about that, and you have to give a matched marrow or else you develop really life-threatening complications. So he came up with a test called the MLR, mixed lymphocyte reaction. So he invented that. And that informed the first successful bone marrow transplant of a 3-year-old toddler in Madison in 1968. So the very first BMT done successfully was right here in Wisconsin. And I was pointing that out to Jeff, that you see in those days, they used to show you where you got your MD and what your faculty rank was. And everybody was from Wisconsin, including one that got his MD from Marquette University. So bone marrow transplant, this is a timeline. And here's 1968, allogeneic, that means from somebody else and yourself, bone marrow transplant. And really the number of these Autologous means taking your own bone marrow for yourself. Allogeneic is somebody else's. You see the number of transplants, a routine medical procedure now, 15,000 per year. But bone marrow transplant works really well for a certain kind of cancer, which is leukemia. It doesn't work for the most common cancers like lung, breast, bowel, prostate, and the like. So it's not great for other cancers. So what's the next thing? So the next big thing that's really hot right now is redeploying your immune system to attack cancer. So evolutionarily, we have white cells in the bloodstream. There are different flavors of white cells. Neutrophils are designed to kill off bacteria, monocytes to kill off yeast, but lymphocytes kill virus, and they also kill virus-infected cells by deleting the cell. So if you can redirect lymphocytes to delete cancer cells, that would be a very powerful thing to do. So let's talk about TILs and LACs. So TILs are tumor-infiltrating lymphocytes. So this is a standard X-ray, and this lump of dump you see up here, that's not normal. This is an X-ray of somebody who has metastatic melanoma, and this is a CT scan, so it's a sort of a slice through the upper part of the chest. And these lumps are not normal here. That's metastatic melanoma. Melanoma is a skin cancer, highly lethal. And the initial tumor could be minuscule, but can very quickly spread throughout your body. And if a surgeon resects this, what has been observed is melanoma in particular elicits an immune response. And this is a melanoma cell, and these fluffy marshmallows are basically lymphocytes that recognize partially the melanoma cells as foreign and is trying to destroy it, but somewhat ineffectively. So this surgeon at the NCI, Steve Rosenberg, had the idea that if I cut this tumor out and I chop it up, can I, by using culture expansion methods, expand those tumor-infiltrating lymphocytes? And in the mid-'80s, interleukin-2, which is a cytokine or hormone, which is really sort of Vitagrow for lymphocytes, was cloned, and you could manufacture large amounts of synthetic IL-2, which allowed to basically take tumor-infiltrating lymphocytes in a Petri dish and expand hundreds of millions of these cells in bags. And then you could give this back to the patient as a transfusion product. So lymphokine-activated killer cells. So these activated lymphocytes given back as a transfusion could literally wipe out the melanoma. And that made him famous. Here's the publication, Science 2002. Here's Steve Rosenberg. And the interesting thing about melanoma, so melanocytes are the skin cells that make you tan when you go in the sunlight because they produce melanin, and that's what make you darker. But melanoma is a malignancy of the melanocyte, and part of the immune reaction is against melanin, which is that dark protein. And in this study, they could foreshadow who would respond because the patients that were responding were developing an autoimmune disorder called vitiligo, which is an allergic reaction against your own melanocytes. And vitiligo can affect your hair, and these white patches is because this patient that got his own TILs against melanoma was now creating an allergic reaction against his own normal melanocytes, causing vitiligo. These patients that were fortunate enough to get this autoimmune problem, we knew they would do well in regards to the response. The vexing aspect about the TIL story is only 1 out of 10 patient would respond. 9 out of 10, it wouldn't work. So that's why we don't give TILs in routine clinical practice for melanoma, because the response rate is too low. So what next? So what's next is moving from TILs to CAR T. So Dr. Banner and CAR T, this is really a difference. And what we're doing here, the notion is to take TILs and to reprogram them genetically so they acquire additional cell attributes that markedly increase their potency and their ability to kill target tumor cells. So how do you make a CAR T? CAR T stands for chimeric antigen receptor T cell. So you have a cell, and you have the nucleus. Nucleus is sort of kind of the software to the hardware, where the DNA or the coding sequences are that control everything that goes on in the cell. And what you want to do is you want to modify the attributes of this cell by introducing synthetic genetic material. The revolution in this space occurred in the mid-'80s when the tools were developed to be able to introduce synthetic DNA efficiently into target cells. And that has to do with a delivery vehicle, which then brings a synthetic DNA and leads to reprogramming of the cell. So that's, in essence, what gene therapy is all about. And the way we do this, and the way the field do this, so this is an electron microscope picture of what's called a viral producer cell. So we have these cell lines that we can grow as a crop in the Petri dish, and they bud on their surface these little particles that they extrude and fall off, a bit like pollen, and these are what are called retroviral particles. And indeed, these shed in the culture media, and you harvest the culture media and you can purify these particles that now have synthetic RNA, and we harness the ability of these viruses to infect target cells to reprogram them. So in a nutshell, now you can take lymphocytes. So if you have an individual has a malignancy, we can take her blood, purify the lymphocytes, put them in a Petri dish, and basically generate synthetic virus that contains synthetic RNA, which then goes into the target cell, reprograms the DNA in a permanent manner so that that cell and all the daughter cells arising from its proliferation are now gene enhanced. So this is now a standard medical procedure. Let me walk you through this cartoon. So you have a patient that, this is approved for a type of leukemia called B-cell leukemia. We do a leukapheresis, which we connect you to a machine where your whole blood volume circulates through it. It takes about 3 hours. And we can collect about 10 billion lymphocytes in a bag. These 10 billion lymphocytes are then activated with that IL-2 that I spoke of. And then we can add the synthetic virus that changes the cell attributes of the lymphocytes so now they can recognize cancer. And again, the T cells proliferate, again, like the Rosenberg bags. And these can be reinfused into the patient. So it's your own cells that are reinfused back. This young woman, well, she was a girl then, was the first human subject in the US to receive TILs to treat leukemia. And it was a Lazarus effect. So she was dying of acute leukemia. She had failed all chemotherapy. It was the end of the road. So her parents agreed to enroll her. This was at UPenn in Philadelphia. And they basically took her lymphocytes and went through this whole machination I just described. She got an infusion. She went into complete remission. And she remains alive to this day. She's the first patient. Within a few years, the FDA, so this was published for acute leukemia, for CLL, which are two types of leukemias. And now there are a number of approved products. And this is such a remarkable thing that there's actually a movie that came out this year about it. And it won a prize at the Tribeca Film Festival. So of medicine and miracles. So this is Carl June, the chap that came up with the crazy idea. He actually was interested in trying to cure AIDS. And he was trying to modify gene lymphocytes to do that. But he discovered a method to remove leukemia cells, and that's how it took care of that. So we were part of the clinical trials to validate this. So Christian Capitini is a bone marrow transplant physician at UW. We enrolled 4 subjects. And in 2017, so she was treated in 2012. In 2017, this was approved by the FDA 5 years, because it worked so remarkably well. And the name of the product is Chimera. You're a young graduate student there, because I was talking to you. Okay, I'm going to ask you a cream puff question here. What do you think is the price of this drug marketed by Novartis? There's no wrong answer. Tell me what you think. $500. How about $475,000? Yeah, you have the right numbers. It's just the exponentials at the end. And that's one of the big issues arising now from these technologies, going to be patient access. So this is a press release, 2014, before it was approved. They knew the approval was coming down the pike. And the cost was in excess of $500,000, but that's just parts, because that's buying the drug. Typically a patient, because you need to get a kind of chemotherapy to be receptive to it, you have to be hospitalized for observation because side effects pretty serious can arise. So you need to bolt on about $400,000 of medical care to that. So the real cost of treatment of this can be almost $1 million per patient. So I'm just giving you, access is going to be a real issue. But the business model in North America is the one that'll make the price go down is eventually is competition, like all things. So now they're expanding indications. So this works really well for a kind of a flavor leukemia called a B-cell leukemia, and they've expanded that to do this in adults. But the vexing issue about this CAR-T technology is it works well for leukemias, but not for cancers. So CAR-T and leukemia cells are free-floating in your system. They're not hiding behind any walls. And the CAR-T cells can ferret them out and get rid of them. But most of the prevalent malignancies, lung, bowel, breast, and the rest, cloak themselves in normal cells and tissue that from your body. So there it's like trying to assault a fortress, and the CAR-T just can't do that, because this is the tumor microenvironment is blocking the ability of the CAR-T cells to eradicate the cancer. So the next level of innovation then is, what is it that we can add on or bolt into CAR-T to overcome this problem? And this is some of the science that my group has been doing. So whenever you get a bad virus, even COVID, and you feel icky, it's not the virus that's making you sick, it's your immune response to the virus that's making you sick. So your white cells are producing small molecules called cytokines, and that's what leads to a fever, muscle aches, feeling unwell. And there's a purpose for these cytokines, because they activate the immune system and they can help also reduce the virus load in your body. And these cytokines are produced by white cells, and if you do sort of the sum of it, there may be about 100 growth factor, leukines, cytokines that can be produced. And this is just a list of the network of what goes on in your normal immune response. So the idea we had was, is it possible to engineer super cytokines, gain of function? And our approach was the Chimera approach. Chimera is a mythical animal of a lion with a goat on its back and a snake as its tail. It's a combination of different parts. So the idea we had was to take at least 2 of these cytokines, I told you there's 100, and using genetic engineering, merge them as a single polyprotein. And here what we did is we merged GM-CSF and interleukin-2, and this is just a ribbon structure of what that looks like together. And what we found is these fusion cytokines that we call fusokines, fusion cytokines, fusokines, deploy these incredible gain of functions. And I won't pick on you again, but if you have 100 cytokines, how many tandem pairs can you do mathematically, if you want to impress the professor there? 100 squared. So that's about 10,000 combos. So now, now we haven't done 10,000 combos yet. We've published about a dozen, but all of them have these really interesting gain of function. So the idea now is to take a CAR-T, And I was recently in Italy, so that's why I figured Jeff would pull my tail on that one. There's a little fiat. And the idea now is to, and we actually call them armored CAR-T, to generate a fusokine armored CAR-T where you now got a super duper CAR-T that now can attack that fortress and go through it. So what we're doing is we're now taking the genetic sequence encoding for this fusion cytokine, and I told you about this procedure. We can collect cells, and you culture expand in the Petri dish, but we want to also engineer them to overexpress this fusion cytokine. But what we didn't have, so I'm an expert in this stuff, I'm an expert in the cell therapy stuff, but I really didn't have the tools to do the genetic engineering to high efficiency. And this is where my good friend Jeff Medin comes in. So for those of you that don't know, Jeff Medin is a class of '85 UW Parkside alumnus, and he's also a very accomplished entrepreneur and a scholar and scientist who's now toiling the Medical College of Wisconsin. And above him yet, he was also a commencement speaker in 2014, so he's a really famous guy here. Commencement right here. And a really terrific scientist. And he's just down the road from where I am at UW-Madison, and he is an expert in these synthetic viral vectors to engineer cells. So I call up Jeff, I say, hey Jeff, I gave him sort of the short sciencey version of this. Are you up to this? Do you want us to work together? And Jeff, being Jeff, said, of course. So here, I'm Canadian. He didn't tell you. Well, yes, he did tell you that. You could say by the name, I'm French Canadian. So I really, before coming here, I was at Emory, and I really like the idea of coming to Wisconsin because it's very Canadian-ish. And I like the Wisconsin idea thing, and this is the quote, but I bolded. I like the idea of trying to, not just do the ivory tower stuff, but to MacGyver what we invent into practical tools that we can deploy for people. I actually saw this plaque. This is actually on one of the big buildings on Bascom Hall. So when I came here 6 years ago, I launched the UW Health Program for Advanced Cell Therapy. And our vision is to become national leader personalized cell therapies for improving clinical outcomes in both children and adults. And we want to deploy first-in-human UW science, and we want to provide access and enable partnerships, and working with Jeff on this here. We have pharmaceutical-grade facilities that we built and bed in the hospital so we can manufacture these products to do first-in-human clinical trials. And what is it we want to treat? So I'm interested in treating catastrophic illnesses for obvious reasons, because if you're going to come in with an investigational therapy where there could be substantial risks, you're not going to do this for a benign disorder that you can have a lot of FDA-approved drugs. As for something catastrophic with an unmet need, aligned with UW talent and vision and collaborators, and there has to be a pathway for what's called biologic license, which is marketing approval. Because we're not really interested in just doing one-off experiments or bridges to nowhere. So we have a number of clinical programs, and Jeff spoke to those, but I wanted to highlight one in particular that I'm pretty pleased about, because it's an investigator-initiated trial predicated on homebrew technologies that we've developed at the UW and deploying in Madison as a first in human and first in the world. And we got the license to do this from the FDA in 2020, and our study opened just this year. And to make a long story short, we collect a little bit of bone marrow from back here. It's like an outpatient procedure, a teaspoon of bone marrow, and we can grow your own bone marrow stem cells in a Petri dish. It takes about a week. And we harvest these stem cells, put them in a syringe, and we showed in the mouse model that if you give radiation to a mouse, they get dry mouth. The same way human subjects that have throat cancer that get cured by radiation therapy are plagued for the rest of their life with dry mouth because the radiation basically zapped away their salivary glands. So what we showed in mice is if you take these stem cells and inject them in the zapped salivary gland, we could rescue it. So we made our case to the FDA. The FDA said, we'll give you a license to do an investigational trial. So we're basically taking subjects and growing their own stem cells and then bringing them back once they're grown up and injecting their salivary glands. These are individuals that had throat cancer more than 2 years prior, where they were cured by radiation therapy and had bad dry mouth, and we measure their different outcomes. And we made a press release when we got the IND initially, and this is only possible because it takes a village to make these things happen. Dr. Randy Campbell is a radiation oncologist. He's the guy, he feels bad about causing dry mouth, so he brings in all these patients to participate. Grace Blitzer works with him on this. And this is our team, Olga Gans and Ross Myers and Jenna Myers, who basically were manufacturing the cells in that facility. And Tiffany Glazer is a throat surgeon that basically under ultrasound was injecting the patient's own stem cells in their salivary glands. We're treating our 6th patient next week. So if this looks promising, or we think that this is going to be, there are literally thousands of patients that have this problem, and anybody gets radiation therapy, the likelihood of you getting dry mouth from throat radiation therapy is more than 80%. And there's no FDA-approved treatment. So on my concluding slide here, what I'd like to speak to is the Wisconsin idea for the 21st century. So universities are really good at discovery and teaching, but they're really not good at development and deployment of pharmaceutical platforms. But this is one where we can actually be masters of our domain and take ownership of developing and deploying this and making this accessible to our patient population. And to me, the notion of distributive justice matters a lot. I mean, $1 million per patient, that's not sustainable. And if these technologies start working for prevalent cancers like lung, breast, bowel, prostate, it's not going to happen. So we have to come up with these better tools, competitive technologies that can address this need. And I think UW Parkside is part of the constellation of academic centers that train the next generation of highly qualified professionals that we absolutely need in our laboratories to make this happen. Actually, I was chatting with a young undergrad that was working with Jeff and with Brian. Where's Brian? Where's Brian? Brian's around. There's Brian. I was saying, Brian, hey, Brian, I need to hire people. Do you have job posts? So on that, I'd like to conclude. Thank you again for your attention, and it was lovely for you to invite me over to speak today. I much appreciate it. Dino, too, I guess.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for coming. I am particularly impressed by the way that, Jack, Dr. Gallipo positioned his talk. I know when I spoke to him back in February or about that time, we were kind of thinking, oh, we don't want this to be an immunochemistry, lecture. And he said, no, it's not going to be that way. I'm going to tell people what they will understand, when they leave, with my talk. I am a chemist myself, so I still find myself struggling with biology. Okay. But I was able to pick out at least 60% of, what he said, because if I can take stuff in my body and use it to cure something else in my body, how great is that? But $1 million is too much. So we hope that the state of Wisconsin continues to support the work you do to make that accessible to people. Like you talk about distributed justice. Okay, not many people will be able to have $1 million to spend on one illness. Thank you also, Dr. Mohazabi. I met Paul about 10 years ago. I'm in my 11th year at UW Parkside. And I still remember the first time I met him. The departments of math and physics have just been married. And of course, like, very, newlywed, they were fighting, And so that was October 2012. And I told him, you just got married, why are you looking for divorce, It's only about 6 months or 1 year ago. And Paul just sat quietly throughout, that whole meeting. And then I think something happened within the department, and on the physics side, one person left, another person retired, and stuff like that. And Paul came to me and he said, do you think I should stay here? I said, why? Did you plan on retiring? And he said, no, then stay. Because you can't just be responding to what people are doing. They have their own reasons for trying, to do that. So I'm grateful that Paul is still here. Sometimes he and I joke. I think he's, the only faculty that walks into my office like 3 times a day. When he wants to stretch his leg, he just comes and he finds something else to talk about. And we, so I would only take 5 minutes of your time. I said, sit down, please. You can't be talking to me standing up. Please sit down. And then we talk for 10 minutes and then, get back to work. I've enjoyed, continue to enjoy the time with him. At this time, it is my honor to introduce the president of the College of Natural and Health Sciences Advisory Board to help me with offering the scholarship to the students. We have 13 students who have earned scholarship this evening, and we would like to present them to you. I will also be asking the provost of the UW Parkside, Dr. Rob Dukoff, to please join me in handing out a small gift that we have made, for the students. The money is not in the bottle, okay? So don't attack anybody, just a piece of paper that's in there. Okay, please come up.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Otu. And also, I'm thrilled and honored to be presenting these awards to 13 Parkside students. All of them have impressive credentials, which you can read about in today's, in our handout. Without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and start introducing these fine young men and women. Starting off, is Astrid Levesque. Astrid is a biological science major. Upon graduation from Parkside, she plans to attend medical school. Astrid? Congratulations. Next up, we have Bailey Peterson. Bailey is a student in our applied sciences major with a concentration in the medical laboratory sciences. Bailey's family has a strong background in the healthcare industry, and she plans to use her technical logic, goodness gracious, her technical knowledge in this field. Congratulations, Bailey. Next, we have Christian Marquez. Christian is a physics and pre-engineering major. He's with our consortial program with UW-Milwaukee. Christian plans to obtain his associate's degree in physics, then transfer to UW-Milwaukee to complete his mechanical engineering degree. Thank you, Christian.
Thank you.
Next, we have Elise Zevitz. Elise is a biological science major. Elise is returning to school after earning an earlier bachelor's degree in history. She is now studying to prepare for medical school. Congratulations. We have next Hunter Cheney. Hunter is a chemistry major. Hunter plans to earn a doctorate in chemistry upon graduation. He plans to pursue a career in academia. Next, we have Joel Lee. Joel is majoring in the Clinical Mental Health Counseling program. Joel plans to pursue a career in clinical health counseling. Very good. Next, we have Julia Jones, a physics major here at Parkside. Julia plans to earn a doctorate in physics upon graduation. She plans to pursue a career in academia. Very good. Next, we have Logan Civic. Logan has a degree in applied health sciences major. Logan plans to earn a master's degree in occupational therapy at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. Congratulations. Next, we have Michelle Dietz. Michelle is in our applied health sciences major. Michelle plans to go to graduate school and also pursue a degree in occupational therapy. Congratulations. Next, we have Nick Winter. Nick is a biological science major. Nick plans to obtain a graduate degree with a focus in biological sciences. Congratulations. Next, we have Ria Patel. Ria is a biological science major here at Parkside. Ria plans to become a physician who works in the public health field. Congratulations. Next, we have Samantha Meyer. Samantha is pursuing a master's in clinical mental health counseling. Samantha has returned to the classroom after earning a degree in psychology. She plans to enhance her career with her graduate degree in clinical mental health counseling. Congratulations. Thank you very much. And finally, we have Vanessa Reynoso. Vanessa is earning a degree in applied health sciences with a health sciences major. Vanessa is a first-generation college student who plans to attend medical school. Very good. With that said, thank you very much. We have a great class of scholarship winners this year.
Congratulations to all the students who have received the CNHS Advisory Board Scholarship. Your check is in the mail. Okay, so at this time, I would like to introduce the provost of the University of Wisconsin-Parkside, Dr. Robert Dukoff.
Is there really a check in the mail? Dino too? Okay, good. Well, thank you all for coming tonight. This is a sort of night that reminds me how privileged we are to work in a university. Just fantastic students and colleagues and community supporters, and just incredible speakers. Professor Mohasbe and Jacques, a fellow Canadian. This was really a treat to have you both and listen to your stories. I want to thank all of you for being here, students, alumni, and community members. The CNH Advisory Board, which I've had the pleasure to join on many occasions, and is such an essential a group to the incredible education that's being offered by the faculty and staff in the College of Natural and Health Sciences. I want to also thank Emmanuel O'Toole, who is just an incredible leader, an incredible dean, Chancellor Debbie Ford, who couldn't be here tonight, and all the staff that really help make an event like this happen. I just want to take a moment to read their names. Jean Suda, Joy Lee, Laura Schultz, Jenna Kelly Perry, Isaac Coe, Jen Bush, Linnea Boer, Hannah Wallish, Catherine Montuano, Taylor Lemons, and our student volunteers as well. Let's give them a round of applause, please. I'll be quick. I'm sure there's something good on TV. I've been thinking recently, we hear a lot of people questioning the value of a college education, of an undergraduate education. You know, and I used to be a marketing professor, and there's really no future in blaming the consumer. And so I think it's important for us to reflect carefully on what people are saying and what they're thinking. An undergraduate degree is long, and it's expensive for many people, and it doesn't work out for everybody. It doesn't fit for everybody. But when we look at the data, it's absolutely still compelling that individuals that complete an undergraduate degree lead more fulfilling lives in almost any way you'd want to measure that, whether it's how much one earns, whether one's civically engaged, whether one's satisfied or happy in their life, or whether people vote in elections. But of all the things I could think of that go to the value of an undergraduate education, especially at UW-Parkside, I want to share some data with you that maybe some of you are familiar with, but to me is the most compelling data that we have as an institution. And this is data that Brian Lewis collects, and it's data that spans 22 years. And I want to make sure I share this with you sort of fairly slowly and clearly so that you can sort of capture the meaning of all of these numbers that I'm going to share. This is over 22 years. 91% of the applicants from UW-Parkside that applied to medical school were accepted. The national average over that period is 36%. 77% of the UW-Parkside applicants to physical therapy school were accepted. 90% of the applicants to pharmacy school were accepted. 71% of the applicants to physician assistant programs were accepted. 72% of applicants to dental school, 86% of applicants to vet school, 100% of applicants to chiropractic school, 100% of applicants to optometry school, and 96% of applicants to podiatry school were accepted. And I want to just drop a few names. This year, medical school admits are going to UW-Madison, Vanderbilt, Howard, NYU, Dartmouth, Columbia, and the University of Chicago. And if you just can't resist and feel like applauding at this point, I think that would be really appropriate. And when you also consider that undergraduate tuition across the UW system for in-state residents has been frozen for 10 years, which goes even further to the value proposition for what our institutions are providing. And matched with extraordinary outcomes, it really says something about the quality of the education that's going on here. So I just want to say again, thank you very much, all of you, for attending this evening to celebrate our wonderful students and colleagues and guests and advisory board members and other supporters and donors. And I look forward to seeing all of you at the 9th annual celebration of the College of Natural and Health Sciences next year. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Well, thank you, Provost Dukoff, Dean Otu, our distinguished speakers, guests, friends, graduates, alumni. This has been a fantastic evening. So I want to thank you all sincerely for coming out tonight. In particular, I'd like to say one more time, congratulations to our outstanding students. Congratulations on what you have earned. It is a value proposition. We're betting on you. You're good bets. So we're nearly at the end of the evening, and I will say that I'm going to close the silent auction in 2 minutes, everybody. In 2 minutes, we shall close the silent auction, and then we'll tally, and we'll figure out who gets what, and then we'll have you collect for it on the way out, including payment. Thank you, by the way, again. Remember, just remember, the money that is given for these baskets will go to celebrate other students moving forward and provide them with opportunities to get scholarships that allow them to do the wonderful things you've heard about tonight, and will allow them to continue to develop as professionals and give them the opportunities that they truly deserve. So this doesn't happen without you guys. So thank you so much for all the support that you provide to your students, this university, the college. Thank you all for coming tonight. I'd like to again thank all the administrators, all the guests tonight, especially the students, the student workers. I'm supposed to in particular thank the Banana Bunch. Yeah, that's right. I told you I would say that, okay. But thank you all for, again, a wonderful night. Again, it's the 8th annual event. We will call this to a close formally for the evening. Please feel free to stick around and chat for a bit. We can do some networking and things like that. And I look forward to seeing all of you again at the 9th annual event. And again, for those of you who are online, thanks for sticking around. Thanks for doing it. Next time, consider coming. Thank you all very much for a wonderful night. Drive safely, and we'll see you again next year. Thank you.